So thank you for joining us today, man. How is it going?
Dude, it's going great, man. Thank you for having me on here. I'm excited to talk. But just out here in sunny Florida right now, soaking up some rays, getting some work done, looking to find some tropical fruits, trying to find some fruit trees.
Awesome, man. It's good that you are not too far from me. We're about probably like 3 hours away. I know you're in the West Coast. I'm in the East Coast. But I know you've been traveling a lot, so it must be a nice change to have this good weather down here.
It's a no-brainer. It was like 15 degrees in the mountains and it was snowing and it just gets so cold at night. And when you're living in your vehicle, it's not ideal. You can do it. I can wear a coat and stuff during the day, but when you're just hanging out or trying to get some work done on the computer or even like doing projects, you can't, it's just not. I have 6.5 foot of space. That's my house. That's my park bed. And yeah, it was time to go somewhere a little bit warmer and change of scenery and change of, everything that grows here is very different. You're not seeing apple trees. You're seeing bananas, mangoes, papayas. It's amazing. I love it.
Definitely, man. 15 degrees, that's crazy because over here we woke up in the 50s today, 53 when I woke up. And that's like a cold front down here. So that's crazy from 15 to
Everyone's saying
53.
that. Everyone's like, "Oh,
Hey,
it's so
so
chilly. I'm so chilly." I'm joking around with them. I'm like, "It's an Arctic blast. It's 60 degrees."
oh yeah, in Florida, everyone pulls out the boots and winter jackets, even though it's in the 50s.
Absolutely.
Hey man, but I just wanted to get right into it, and the first thing is really just the name of your channel. It's very interesting, and just wondering why did you choose Barefoot Appalachia?
Man, I think I was just thinking of stuff that I did anyways and like usernames. And I feel like I have a deep connection with just the Appalachian Mountains. I've always gone to them as soon as I could drive. I started driving out to the mountains with my friends, going hiking, and eventually I was like, man, you start hearing about grounding and everything, and even before that, I just felt really good to go hiking with no shoes on, just connection with the earth. It felt good. It's kind of like versatile. You weren't born with shoes, so if you can go around without them, it's kind of I guess it's a good utility to have walking on gravel, walking on rocks. You build up the calluses on your feet, they become really thick. I just feel more, it's kind of like building muscle, except it's in your feet and almost training your mind to deal with the uncomfortability. But also, that's if it's gravel. If you're on moss and leaves, it's very comfortable and then the ground tickles your feet. And yeah, it just seemed like someone sees a video or they see a comment, and if my name was just Cole Richardson, then we go, it's Cole Richardson. But they see Barefoot Appalachia, they're like, oh, what's that guy about? What is he not wearing shoes? He's in the mountains. It kind of tells you a bit of who I am without even seeing any of the videos or hearing me speak.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about the whole just being barefoot and how really that's how we used to live, right? And I've seen recently how the shape of our feet is deformed because of wearing shoes, right? And shoes that um, maybe is tighter in the front. So going back to barefoot and walking around in the ground supposedly has a lot of good benefits, right? And then also grounding, of course, has a lot of very trending now topic, right? So um,
Absolutely.
that's makes a lot of sense, definitely, because of the grounding and the shape of the feet. So I hadn't thought about the shape though. And you mentioned a little bit on how you're living on your truck right now and going from place to place. So can you tell me what have you learned about life on the road?
Oh man, I think that the big thing is, at least for me, that I crave new environments. It keeps you from getting, I mean, one, bored, but even when you're working, even if you had like a regular job, you were working online, a change of scenery is a good way to keep your body in an uncomfortable state. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you fresh. And there's a lot more opportunities to meet people. When I first started my channel a year ago is when I started posting. Before that, I made my first YouTube video, and I didn't do a whole lot after that. I just thought that I don't know what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna talk about really, but the more people who know who I am, the more I put out there, the more opportunities will come my way, whether that's business or friendships or maybe my future wife. Like people, I mean, my dad always says, like, when you run a business, you could be the best plumber, who knows who you are, you're going to be broke and you're not going to have a business. So I just wanted people to kind of see the world through my lenses and share my perspective, because I thought it was, you know, relatively unique, especially going around planting the fruit trees and just kind of sharing what I've learned. But also, it's just hitting the road. Yes, it keeps you uncomfortable, it keeps things fresh, but um, it leaves a lot of room to meet new people. Um, I didn't want to be around the same people that I grew up with in the same, you know, suburban town. I wanted people with a different perspective, maybe from some different cultures with different life experiences than I was used to growing up with, and that's exactly what's happened. A lot of the people I met that I've, you know, befriended have been from all over the place, you know, different countries, different states, different living environments, and I really like connecting with people that have experienced different things. And the same things is fine, but you know, I needed a fresh start. I needed something new.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, that's where growth really happens. And meeting new people is also so key as for us humans, having a relationships and getting to know things from other people's experiences is so important. And traveling is a very easy way to be able to meet so many people in a short amount of time and from different places. So definitely know that you're having an awesome time. And it even relates to people that are into prepping and homesteading, because of course growing food uh, could be for many different aspects of life, right? But one of them that shares a lot when it comes to homesteading and growing food is prepping. And you always hear of bug out bags, and people having to leave from one place to another because of an emergency. But a lot of the times, people don't put it into practice and actually go and do it, right? So you actually get to experience that on a daily basis because you know what is essential to for everyday life, right? So my question then is, what are some of the most essential items that you see for everyday life that are necessary?
Oh man, that's a good one, because man, I came from a place where I wanted to get into being more prepared. I was already learning how to can food, make jerky, all that, and I couldn't take that with me. So I know exactly where, you know, my food, the water, the sun comes from, and I have pretty much at all times. You know, as long as I got my truck, and I do have like the go bags just for if I need to go out on like climb a mountain. You have everything you need for the next couple of days right in there. Um, I mean, besides shelter, you know, I've got solar panels for my electricity. You know, if it was like a worst case scenario, I guess you don't really need, you know, to charge your phones and stuff if all the towers were on. But I have the solar running a refrigerator in the back of my truck, which keeps all my food fresh. I've got, you know, probably 15 gallons of water containers, stainless steel, and I know where I have a map of where all the natural springs are that I go to. So, you know, every week or so, whenever it's necessary to fill up, I'll actually find those places and load up the containers. I got all my food, got all my water. You know, I've got like a 7 pound container of tallow. That's probably, I don't know, a couple 100,000 calories. If it really came to it, that's going to store for years and years and years. Um, and then just being able to cook, you know, I've got a propane burner with a skillet. You know, obviously spicy is not super essential, but it helps. Um, and I mean, I think it's a lot of just having, like, the refrigerator is very helpful running off the solar. It takes very low power. I can have no sun for probably about a week and it's still going to run. So I think people are always worried about generators, this, generators, that. I got one 200-watt panel and a freezer, or a fridge or a freezer. You can pick which one you want based on the temperature. And I mean, I pretty much have everything I need right here. You know, a place to sleep. I've got a heater right here. Fill up on some of that. And it keeps me warm when I'm not in Florida. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely, man.
You know.
So how do
Oh,
you think that? Go ahead, go ahead.
I was also gonna say just have water filters. And there's a trash truck going by. Give me 1 second. But basically having like water filters, I've got like 5 of those with me. So if I'm in a situation where I can't find a spring, I don't want to drink the polluted tap water, you can actually go out. Um, oh, that's a horrible sound. I'm so sorry, guys. You can actually go out and I could filter water from a puddle and make it drinkable, and it's not going to make me sick. So I always have those in my backpacks wherever I'm going. I'd prefer to get it from a mountain stream or someplace really clean like a spring. But if I got to drink from a puddle, I have the necessary filters to do so.
That's good, man. You're definitely learning some skills that you could take throughout your life, and in an emergency situation, they will definitely come in handy, right? While you're also learning great experiences, meeting new people, and of course, planting fruit trees everywhere that you go, which comes down to the important part, and is why do you think that growing your own food is so important?
Oh man, it's I think knowing where your food comes from, you can't really rely on these big corporations to give you food. They always try to do these labels that are so misleading. Oh, it's organic. Oh, but it's sprayed, but it's an organic pesticide. But really, like they just put different labels on stuff, and you don't really know what you're getting. And generally, especially even fresher stuff, gets pretty expensive after a while if that's like a big part of your diet, and it's still hit with the pesticides. And I believe that we were given this ability to walk this earth, to have this soil, and given these seeds here so that we can plant them and grow what we need. I don't think it's supposed to be a commercial production thing. I think we were born, I mean, we're only a couple generations in, after industrialization, to a group of people who really doesn't know where their food comes from and are paying these crazy prices for food that is sprayed with these poisons. And I just don't think it's natural. I think the first thing that kind of inspired me was when I was out in the mountains walking. I was fly fishing along a river, and I found these two red things hanging from a tree. I was kind of in the shade. I was like, "What in the world is that?" I realized it was a wild cherry tree, and I ate the cherries, and it was absolutely delicious. And then I looked around, and I was like, "Why aren't these everywhere? Why would you go to the store and pay for them when you can grow them at the local park? Or you could do it in your front yard. You could go to the local church. I'm sure they have a big open field, and you could work out a deal with them. And they have so much unused space. You could grow some fruit trees. You could put some squash in the ground." And then I saw it as that's an easy way and an affordable way to start rewilding these areas that you live around, to get both healthy food and then cheap food. And it's going to nourish your soul and your body even more than anything that you'd find in the store. And you know exactly where it comes from. You're taking your health and your food supply into your own hands. And to me, it was just a no-brainer.
Definitely a no-brainer to those who want to do the research, right, and make the necessary sacrifices to make changes. Because just how your lifestyle going from one place to another at times can be uncomfortable, those sacrifices have their rewards, right? So
Sir.
the reason why we have, how you mentioned, is just it's only a couple of generations that have passed, that now people don't know where their food comes from, right? And it's all because of comfort, of course, that it's been able, the change has been able to be made. But since it's only been a couple of generations, and I mean you're in your early 20s, right? So we know that there are people that are young that are interested in, hey, going back to the old ways, growing our own food, knowing where our food comes from. Why do you think that this change happened over the years, where we lost the skills to grow our own food and raise our own livestock?
I would say a lot of it's, I mean, a big part's industrialization, comfort, the jobs moving away from the rural areas, going into the cities, people needing to go into, New York City, go into Richmond, Virginia, Tampa, Florida, just to make money when historically people lived on family farms and most people grew. I think it used to be like 80% of the food that they consumed came from like their local farm, whether that's the eggs, the milk, the meat, the fruit. Maybe they'd buy some extra goodies, get some cookies from the neighbor, barter them. Um, and I think it's a systemic thing, kind of like you look at, I found these really old books at a very old bookstore out in West Virginia, and it was talking about how basically like your average family could have X amount of chickens, and you would be able to make like a decent living just selling like the eggs and some produce from your farm. Like if they were going to sell it to like some of the neighbors, Like just selling some eggs was like more than your average side hustle these days, and they could raise a family off of that with only one person working. Say, maybe the husband goes out and he's a coal miner, or he works in a lumber factory, or he does whatever. I mean, I guess before like the factories, but they could do that, and then now we have like double the amount of people working, which was like supposed to be super empowering. But then now that everything twice the income is in a family, the price of goods is more than doubled. So now the husband and the wife are working, and now they're not at the home with the kids, so they got to go to the public school, and then now things are double. So now there's like twice the work or more with less money, and then like people are just like, oh my gosh, well, things are getting so expensive, I just got to go get a sales job in the city, I got to go do this, I got to do that, I got to go work at the chemical factory. And kind of like raw milk, I mean, everyone talks about this and that, everyone's got opinions, but like the safety or whatever aside that people like to dispute, just the fact that if you wanted to sell some milk back in the day, you would just clean the udders, milk the cow, put it in a jar, and if you wanted to sell some, you could sell it. It was that easy. If you had a business, pay your taxes, write it down, whatever, and now you have sold some milk. Once they made it illegal to do that, they were like, hey, pasteurize it, and you have this process. I don't know if it cut out for a second, but once you process it and you have this facility, let's say that cost $1 million to be able to sell milk. Now the barrier to entry used to be like a cow and a bucket and some cleaning supplies. Now it's $1 million facility, and now it's just the big corporations are able, it's probably more than $1 million now, are able to sell that milk. So now those people who just made some side money selling milk, or maybe that was their full-time dairy farm operation, the price, it's so much more expensive to do that, and then they had to move to the city. So it's like that times like 1,000. You take that from like all the regulations and the red tape. It drove the regular people out from the country, and then they had to go into the cities, and that's why we're disconnected from our food, because most people aren't eating the land around them like they used to be.
And you hit on a lot of good points for sure. And one thing you mentioned that is systemic, it pretty much sums it up, right? It has been done systematically through all the different systems of society, which is education, health, politics, right? It's all been done little by little, and then that's how it has changed throughout the generations. And how you mentioned twice the income, then but really with the cost of inflation, it doesn't equivalent. It doesn't matter that it's twice the income, but then it's also twice the taxes too. So it's just funny
Yeah.
because you think that you're getting a benefit one way, but in reality, they're taking away from another in another way. And then how you mentioned the regulations and raw milk, of course, and the safety and barrier to entry is so true, right? Because a lot of people would want to start now to maybe live off of the land, but how you said, it's not the same thing as back in the day, where maybe just selling eggs and a few produce, they will be able to make a living. Now that's just like a side hustle, right? To make it your main income, it's not as easy as it was before. But at the end of the day, we have to make it work somehow, because we can take control to our own hands, especially on a individual and a community level. You know, and what you're doing is
100%.
great, going from one state to another, meeting new people and learning from them, but also sharing your story and gardening everywhere that you go. So my next question is around the tools that you carry with you, right? So obviously, I'm sure that everywhere that you go, people let you borrow some of the bigger tools, but what are some key tools that you carry everywhere
Oh
that are
yeah.
related to gardening?
Oh, well, I've got so much stuff in my eyes over the years using chainsaws. So I've got like a full face goggle thing so I don't get any wood chips in there. But what I use most of the time, I've got a foldable shovel, a Harbor Freight, 2 foot long shovel. I've got some hand pruners that I keep in my door. And I carry around some comfrey root cuttings for some of my friends' farms that want to get some more minerals into the soil. I always carry some comfrey and some bone sauce. It's from my friend Billy. My friend Billy over at Permapastor's Farm. He's got like this stuff, and you put it on the trees, and it repels the deer. But biggest being the shovel. When I go out to really rocky areas, I've got a little pickaxe, a miniature one, shovel, pickaxe, hand pruners, and yeah, maybe some
That's awesome,
sandals.
man.
I can go outside. Too far
Some,
out in the mountains. My feet, after about 8 to 10 miles, my feet start to hurt. So I got some sandals with me.
some sandals. That's funny because I'm wearing boots always, so I gotta get used to be more barefoot. It is a better way. But yeah, I've actually heard of the bone sauce. Following his channel, but I've never got it. So just wondering how that works. But that's pretty interesting. And looking through your page, I saw that you have a class on how to buy land, and that is something that a lot of people are looking into doing now, right? Trying to leave the cities or maybe have a homestead while still living in the city. So just wondering, what is a healthy land buying mindset for you?
Oh man, healthy mindset. At least when you're buying it, I like to say my mindset going into it is why should I not buy this property? I want to be the least amount emotionally connected as possible. Like you want to like where you live, but there's a lot of stuff that looks really sexy on Zillow and Redfin and Land.com, and I've probably gone out and seen 60 plus properties in person, give or take, that I thought were going to be it was going to be the one, and I almost got my butt handed to me a lot of times because I would get there and I realized that it used to be a coal mine. There was a train derailment right next door, and there's a bunch of, vinyl chloride in the water, in the aquifer. It's like the neighbors are crazy. They might be like I bought it. Well, I made an offer on a piece of property, and both neighbors, they were on like the sex offender registry for like doing stuff with children, and I decided I was like not going to buy that. That's the stuff you got to look into. Like I always talk about like Superfund sites where there was some sort of hazard spill factory. The EPA came in, started to remediate the land, and people are like, oh, that doesn't seem like a huge deal. Like the land's nice. It's only a couple miles away. Like I can't see it. It'd be fine. And then you look at what happened in North Carolina, Western North Carolina after the flood, and the floods uncovered a lot of those buried Superfund site containment, not ponds, but I mean, maybe the pods or the barrels that they were storing underground full of, radioactive waste, super toxic, corrosive chemicals. And then it went into the waters and it affected the air, the water, everything like that. So like the healthy mindset is like when you see a piece, you got to do your due diligence. That's what I talk about in the course. But I go in there like, why should I not buy this property? I want to find every reason not to go there in the first place. Like, is it less than half a mile from a busy highway where you're going to, as soon as it becomes fall and winter, the leaves are going to fall. There's not as much of a sound barrier. And now you're going to hear the road noise all the time. Are the neighbors, is it like a really trashy area where maybe you won't fit in or they don't want people there? Have you talked with the neighbors? Is there any factories, big industrial industry really close by that's upstream or downstream on a river or just within the general proximity? Is there gigantic power lines, like the main ones that you cut through a county with all the EMF and radiation that they're putting out? So I'm like, how do I go in there and pretty much I want to eliminate 80% of the listings that I see that I got excited about. And then from there, you can go in and do some more research and cross off XYZ, talk to the neighbors on the phone before you even get there, introduce yourself, and ask them, hey, why should I not go? Tell me the tea. What's the worst thing about this place? Because I want to have a family farm here one day. So I don't want to be in a place where I'm not welcomed or where the air and the soil is not pure, and XYZ. So the mindset is not to get emotionally invested with until later in the process when you're actually there and it's checked all the boxes that you need it to have it be a safe purchase. Because what I talk about is mostly like, it's not so much, oh, this is how you find land with pasture. You can just see that online. It's usually like environmental pollutants, EMF, radiation sources, looking into the future from kind of, I guess, a prepper mindset. If you're going to look at a place and something crazy happens in all the cities, are you in like the path of least resistance of everyone driving out, going and looting houses or trying to look for resources? It's more of a mindset like that. Have a safe and secure place that you can buy that you're not going to regret later down the road.
Definitely, man. I think I lost you for 1 second at the end, but that makes a lot of sense to not get emotionally attached to a specific property and do your due diligence so that you can make an informed decision. And I could relate to that for sure, because when you are searching for land and you find one that maybe looks good, then you could immediately want to make the moves to put in a contract and get it down so that you don't lose the property, right? Because there is a lot of demand out there. But at the same time, it's important to make the right decision because it's a long-term decision. It's something that only a few times are you going to make such a big decision, right? So it's better to take your time.
Yes.
And how you mentioned, there could be some hazardous spill, or the water around the area might have some chemicals in it, and that's a big deal. Or even the neighbors definitely
Oh,
hadn't thought about that one. It's very true. And you
especially if
know
you're on less than 10 acres.
exactly, yeah, if it's a small property, your neighbor's going to be next door, so you want to make sure that you at least do your due diligence, because at the end of the day you can't control everything, but there are some things that you could avoid. So how you said, cross out 80% of the options, and that way you already narrowed it down to a lot better options. So you've
Mhm.
traveled many different states in the last few months, and I'm sure that you've researched a lot related to when you finally settle down and you purchase a home. And what has been your experience understanding zoning and permitting across the different states that you've traveled?
Yeah, I'd say as a generalization, the Southeast is a lot more lax than going into the North. Less taxes, less regulations. You can do more what you want. Um, I know in general, if you have at least 10 acres in a lot of different states that I've looked into, you can have it registered, and you can do like a land use exemption if you have fruit growing. Even if you don't live there, you just have a second property. If you have the neighbors bale some hay or graze cattle on there, sometimes you don't have to pay taxes on the land, or you get a significant discount on that piece of land as far as the taxes go. Um, if you get it, that's why I wanted at least 10 acres, because 10.01 acres or 10 acres, you can classify it as a farm. It helps with taxes. You can get it agriculturally zoned. When in doubt, try to find something that's agriculturally zoned or that doesn't have any zone in that. Call the county zoning department to figure out if they're zoning or not. Um, and you're going to have a lot less issues. If you're in a residential area, there's going to be limits. Can I have pigs here? Can I have cows? Even if it's zone residential, but it's 8 acres and you don't see the neighbors' houses because there's trees in between, it could seem very peaceful, but you still might run into more hassle. So try to get yourself at least 10 or smaller if you can still get agricultural zoning. Southeast is a lot better. More rural areas are better. West Virginia is definitely a lot easier than Virginia because that affects power, what kind of structures you want to put on. I'll tell a quick story about when I was in Virginia. There was no cell service, and I didn't have the Starlink yet. So I was going to make an offer on 10 acres, and I wanted to go there on the weekends after I bought it, which I didn't. I want to go there on the weekends and just turn on the internet. Want to be able to take work calls, communicate with people, just like kind of you were describing. Um, so I realized the only way to do that without satellite internet and a mobile hotspot, or not even a hotspot, but like having a generator and running the power, was going to be getting the fiber optic that was along the road. So I called them. I said, hey, what do I need to do to get the fiber optic run? And they're like, well, you need to give us your address. And I said, well, I just want to do like a shed house, like a little hunting cabin. Can you do that? And they're like, no, we can't even get there without an address. And they were just giving me all this hassle. So I called the county. I said, what do I have to do to get an address? And they said, for an address, you need to have a well, you need to have a septic system, which that was in the mountains and it was going to cost 30 grand. You need to have the power lines ran, which was across the entire 10 acres. I needed to get it to the back. That was the top of the hill where I wanted the house. And then you need to apply for a building permit. Then you have to start a foundation, and then you have a year to finish the house before, we cut off the power and all that stuff. So basically you need to build a house. But even if they approved my tiny house, cheap, $10,000 Home Depot shed, it was probably still going to be over $100,000 in cost just to get internet there. And that was a huge hassle because I wanted to be off grid. So I went like 2 counties over into West Virginia, similar situation. Except when I called the county, I said, hey, I was looking to get like a power pole ran just for like an RV hookup, maybe, $500, $1,000, not like a big, I don't need to go into a house. I wanted to go to an RV or a shed. And I said, what do I need to do to get an address and to have that all above board? And she said, well, in her West Virginia accent, she said, well, I just got to know where your driveway is so we know where to put the mailbox. And she said, shoot, I don't care if you mark it out with a stick in a Kroger bag, like a grocery bag. Just put a stick out there. We'll put the mailbox. We'll get you an address. And, we'll just get you the power pole. Just talk to the utility companies. So going to areas where there's less restrictions, it'd save me like $100,000. The other way, I would have more of a structure still. But, it's a no-brainer. I just want to go out there and, plug into some internet and, go have a good time and start planting some fruit trees. I don't want a big house right now. I wanted to plant edible foods and do the food forest instead of spending all that money on a house. You could do a lot of food forest with $100,000. So that county in West Virginia was way more easy than in Virginia. And every county is different. And some counties might be unzoned where there is no zoning. You can do what you want. But if you hook up to the utilities, then all of the zoning stuff still applies. So it might say no zoning, but if you want to hook up to power and you want to build a structure and have a house, then all of a sudden, they can tell you what, you have to do. Oh, you got to have a 900 square foot house minimum. Oh, it's got to be on a block foundation. It's got to have a well and a septic. If you just stay off grid in an unzoned county, you're fine.
A lot of great info there, man. And that's exactly why I asked, because when someone wants to start growing their own food and maybe, I want to start a homestead, and you start looking for land, we have sort of an idealized view of how things work, looking at YouTube channels or Instagram channels where maybe they've been doing it for a bunch of years now, or they did their research wherever they choose to build or to start living off grid. And then you realize that there's a lot of restrictions depending on where you are. And how you said, just calling the county ahead of time before you make any purchases, it could save you so much money and time, and even just the hassle, right? Because I myself didn't do that. Now, in the area that I'm at in South Florida, there's a lot less space than up north, right? As soon as you get out of North Florida and up, then you have a lot of space. But anywhere Central Florida and down, there's very limited space, so there's not a lot of land that you could find. Most of the counties have a lot of zoning and building permitting. But if you're in other states, it's a lot easier to find places where, how you said, 2 counties over, they allowed you to hook up to the power without having to build a house. At least where I'm at located is exactly what you mentioned. You have to have septic system. You have to have a foundation already poured before the power company comes and hooks it up. So at the end of the day, is knowing your context, right? Knowing what your plan is, because to some people, you mentioned, they might just want to build a small cabin. They don't really need a large building, and then it might be ideal for them to find a county where there is no zoning, where they won't require building permits. But maybe for somebody else, they have a budget and they actually want to go and build their family home from the get-go. So in that case, it might be okay for them to go in one of those counties that there's a lot of restrictions, because either way they're going to start right off the bat building a home. So it's really knowing your context. But at the end of the day, the key thing is not getting emotional and not making final decisions based on your emotions, and really do informed decisions, I think, is the key thing.
Right. You don't want to wake up with a $1,200, $2,000 a month mortgage payment for 15 years on a piece of land that you hate, can't go to. There's issues. And I also wanted to mention, in areas where there are more restrictions, if you have the money to get around them or build things properly, that typically means there's more development in the area and there's going to be more buyers at a higher price for your foods. So you can be in the middle of nowhere, middle of coal country, West Virginia, get land for cheap, do whatever the heck you want, but you might have to drive 5 hours, 4 hours to a major city to sell your stuff. And I know people who would drive 3 hours to the farmer market each way just to sell their stuff to a higher end clientele. So if you are in South Florida, you're going to sell that raw milk for $20 a gallon. You go out to the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania where maybe there's less restrictions, or in Virginia, that's going to go for, it might be 4 or 5. So it's just kind of like a little thing like that. And I also, what was I going to say about the restrictions? Um, Everything's negotiable. Know what you want. Try to learn from some people who have already done it. They'll say that you can't go off grid, and then they'll say, "Hey, we'll make an exception because we want the tax revenue. Just make sure that it's a good structure, and we'll pass it." Don't count on. I wouldn't buy land based off of their word. I passed on a piece of land because he was like, "Oh, it's that'll never pass code, that Amish cabin, but we want you here. You seem like a good guy, so just build it, and then we'll pass it." And I don't want to take that risk, but if you are, that's a possibility. And I also wanted to mention that you could say, "Hey, I'm doing an unconventional septic system. Hey, I want to do I don't plan," because the zoning people want to make sure that you're not about to dump all your sewage in the river. So if you call and be honest, you're like, "Hey, I want to do more of an unconventional setup, but I don't want to be trashy. I want to make sure we're going to compost all of the waste. It's not going to go into the water. It's going to be in this container. It's going to be sterile. We're doing things the right way. We just don't want to do a septic system." They might unconventional septic, a composting toilet, incineration toilet. If you mention some of those keywords, there's an option that maybe they'll let that pass, and do that ahead of time. And the last thing I'll say on that is, when you are looking at a piece of land, never tell the zoning people exactly where it is, because you don't want to say, "Hey, I want to go off grid. I plan on doing this Airbnbs and XYZ. I want to do a composting toilet," and then they say no, and then they already have the address, and then you bought the property. Now you're a target. So I always like to say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying land, in the southern part of the county. Haven't decided yet. Maybe off of Main Street. But I was wondering I definitely want to live here, but what would I be looking at? Could I do this? What are the options? Hey, I'm not trying to, have a, dump the gray water in the creek. So and then yeah, you just don't want to put a target on your back unnecessarily and have them all up in your business. So I always speak in generalities. I don't say exactly where the property is. I don't show them the listing. I just say, "Hey, I was thinking about this county. Tell me what I can do," and that'll probably save you some headache in the long term.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you want to only provide the information that is necessary. You don't need to give out information that is not required at the moment, because it's very true. I mean, there are alternatives to disposing of human waste, and even ways that it could be beneficial to the garden, right? There is a lot of examples on social media how people do human manure, right? It might take a little bit longer to become compost, but it still can become compost, right? If you do it the right way, it's a completely safe and clean. You could still do it in the right way. It just takes a little bit of effort and preparation up front. But of course, as you mentioned, you don't want anyone from the city to be bothering you. So again, the least information that you give, the better. And I mean, all of this what comes to mind really is planning and designing is such a key thing, right? Because when we want to make changes in life, let's say that you have a 9 to 5 job, or you live in the city and you want to move to a rural area and start homesteading, you sometimes want to do it all at once, but and then could make a lot of mistakes and waste money and time. So if you really take a step back and plan ahead and make the right choices, once you purchase the property, following all the necessary steps, which someone looking into doing this, definitely check out your course, right? But once you make that purchase, even then is just the beginning, right? Because where you're gonna put the water well, where you're gonna put the house, your gardens, livestock, all of that is very important decisions that if you don't plan ahead and really design it, could really be a headache later, or a lot of waste of time and money, or just give you a lot more effort. Like just the concept, for example, of
Yes.
zones in permaculture. How how often, how frequent are you going to visit a specific element in your property? And sometimes someone might think, oh, I don't want to have my chickens right next to my house, and they might put it 100 yards away. And if you're going to visit your chickens every day, that means you're going to be walking all that, you know every single day, multiple times a day, maybe. So really planning
Yeah.
and designing is such a key aspect when it comes to homesteading and growing your own food, that is going to be key. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about your trip to the Tennessee and North Carolina area that were affected by Hurricane Milton. Can you share a little bit about what you experienced there?
Yeah, yeah. And I think they got doubled up. It was Helene was the first one, and then I think Milton was the second one that hit Florida too. But yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. There's pollution everywhere, and I say this. I want people to be careful. They need help. They need resources. They need some more volunteers and some businesses coming in, doing the work, contractors. And I don't want to push away people who want to go help because I've done that myself. But there's that saying my mentor told me is you can help people out of the quicksand, but you can't take their place in it. And you can't help any more people if you get sick and you give yourself chemical burns and you're coughing up blood and everything like that. So just make sure that you bring, a Tyvek suit, some PPE, a couple pair of rubber boots, a bunch of water, stuff to clean yourself with, soap, alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, because people are living there in tents along the rivers, and there had been there had been a lot of chemical spills from the storm. The city water is still polluted; it has lead, and there's a bunch of other contaminants in there. They lifted the boil advisory about a week and a half ago, so some of the locals in the city of Asheville were telling me that it's fine and that I'm just trying to lie on the internet for views, but um, it's still not safe. I saw my friends had saw and tested the water, sent it out to a third party lab, and it was not good. And that's after they're saying, hey, it's fine to wash your hands and stuff. And the local businesses still are like, hey, use hand sanitizer. Don't use the water to wash your hands. Don't wash your face. Don't shower in it. Because I got sick after less than 3 days there. I know people who went for a walk along the Swananoa River, and within 2 hours, they could feel their lungs hurting. There's so many pollutants in the air. There's so many lies and politics involved of organizations coming in. Like, we want to go in and help, and then you might be stopped by someone who is like a government or private organization who wants to take credit for that. They're like, hey, you can do this yourself. We're organizing it. You have to work under us. We're taking your donations. Things like that. I don't know if it cut out for a second. All right, it loaded. But yeah, I mean, some of the roads are still blocked off. There's no access. FEMA was there putting some gates up so people didn't drive through. Some of the roads are getting repaired. A lot of it's private citizens that are rebuilding the bridges. And I think now there is more help in the city of Asheville itself, but Swananoa is still bad. Bat Cave's still bad. Marshall is rebuilding, but they're not in good shape. There's still a couple feet of mud in the buildings. And it's just not really safe to hang out there without proper PPE. And heart goes out to everybody because there's been so many things like, Duke Energy opening up the dam. They say it was so the dam didn't break, with and causing a bigger flood, but you can still see the videos of them opening it up in that time of the storm. And I believe that caused some more flooding. So I don't think it's going to be the same for a very, very long time. And at the very least, we need people talking about it because more people talking about it, bring in more money, resources, and help. Just got to do it in a safe way. Want everybody to help. Just don't get yourself sick. I did a poll on my Instagram of people who live there. 56% of the people who answered, I think a couple hundred people answered, said they were feeling sick, and not just regular. Oh, it's wintertime. I have the flu. I have a cold. They were like, my lungs hurt. I'm blowing out blood from my nose. Um, they're coughing for months on end. I think it's been like 2 months. I talked to a lot of people who live there who have homesteads and farms. I think like Billy with Permapastures Farm, the bone sauce guy, he's there, and I think he mentioned that he had been coughing and he hasn't felt the same since the flood. It's just not going away because the reason for them getting sick in the first place hasn't gone away. It's still there circulating in the air and the water. And yeah, those people need some help. They really do. And all I heard was we the people. That was the biggest takeaway. Was you, your local community, the American citizens. Don't rely on outside, help because it may or may not be coming, and if it is, it might be 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later. So get good with your neighbors, even if you don't love them. Figure out a way where you can work together that benefits the both of y'all, or find some better neighbors and find some friends and have them move in next to you. Easier said than done, but that's my goal. That's my dream. I don't want to be isolated alone in the mountains. It'd be great to have a pretty place with no zoning out in the middle of nowhere. Do what you want, but I also want the community. And if I can't find it there, I'm going to make it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, at the end of the day, we do need community as human beings, and I mean, there are of course examples out there where people grow all their food, but in reality, that is a an exception, right? It's not the norm. So we can take back control of certain control systems that are in place, but at the end of the day, it's really how we help each other, how you said, right? That local community really came through in this event. And oh, and you corrected me. Yeah, I said Hurricane Milton, definitely the wrong one. That was the one that hit Florida. It was Hurricane Helene. But it's crazy because so much information started coming out after the hurricane passed, and then at times it made it look worse than it really was, and then at times it made it look not as bad as it really was. So I think that's a big problem that we have now with social media, is that things can be misinterpreted very easily just from videos or pictures. And now, especially what we have coming in the next, it's already here, but in the next few years with AI, how do we know now what's real and what is not, right? But the reality is that
Right.
people were suffering, or and they're still suffering months later, right? It's already been what, like almost 2 months since it happened. So how you said it, 3 weeks
Yep.
later, and no one is gonna be there to help you. That's like on the immediate recovery, but in the long run, still people are over there suffering. How you said, living in tents, and now that the winter is here, I'm sure that those people are having a very hard time just getting by. So it's
There's people
an
free.
eye opening. What did you say?
I said there's people freezing to death right now. That's not a conspiracy. Um,
E-
yeah,
Exactly,
it's.
and
I mean,
and
you
it's
can go
like
what?
no, that there's been times when people are saying, "Oh, it's being exaggerated," but at the same time, no, there are people that suffered a lot, and we need to look into it more. And how you said, if anybody wants to go help and is able to help, make sure you do it in the right way, so that you yourself don't get sick. But of course, there are a lot of information out there where it does seem like there's more agendas at play than just what the general news media is telling us, right? But then um, it's hard to confirm any of those conspiracies, right? How they call it, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of coincidences that happened after that. So, but then one thing is common, is that whenever there's a lot of conspiracies or coincidences that we can't 100% prove, one thing is for sure is that people are suffering. And if we care about
Yes.
each other, if we care about other people, then even that is what matters, right? So yeah, we can confirm all the other agendas, which most likely have some truth to them, and some type of land grab that they were trying to do there, and weather modification, and so many different things that we could go about, that I'm sure we would agree, right? But there's no way to
Oh yeah.
put like actual evidence and then to say, oh yeah, this is what we're saying, is it is what it is. But if we just go and look at the human aspect, people suffering, right? You're saying people are uh, freezing right now. That is already good enough reason for us to talk about it, because at the end of the day,
Yes.
we are to love our neighbors, right, as ourselves. So if we truly love our neighbors, then even if we can't confirm any of the other agendas, at least we know that there are people suffering. So in that end, we can't turn a blind eye. So I mean, any way that you would think that anybody that's far away, I'm very far. I'm in South Florida. How could we help the people that are still there?
I would say in the more tucked away areas, I was driving around delivering supplies. People need, like, it's mostly like bigger ticket items now. I saw a lot of the supply houses were stocked, with boots and things like that. I was trying to give out sleeping bags. Apparently, there's people who hadn't had access to that, maybe because they couldn't drive. But transporting supplies is good. There's pretty much a supply drop off at every fire station, church. There's plenty of bottled water and spring water. I have some friends who have a water truck in a natural spring in their property. They're delivering, 1,000 gallons at a time to people in need. But what I heard was, like, they're in the rebuilding phase. Like, people, yes, like, maybe they have some food and water now, but they don't have a structure, and it's still cold as heck outside. So they were looking for like heaters, like those propane Mr. Buddy heaters. They were looking for like inverter generators that are low fuel consumption, like the Harbor Freight Predator 1200s or 2000s. They're looking for chainsaws so they can actually access some of these more remote areas like Batcave, North Carolina, and things like that, and just getting together and doing like some labor to actually rebuild. And ozone generators, getting mold out of the houses, because maybe they still have a structure, but it's contaminated with mold, and it's really sad, and there's just so much work to do. I have a contact over in Batcave, North Carolina, that was organizing a bunch of those efforts. They have a supply depot at the post office, or at the old post office there, where you can drop some stuff up. I try to communicate with her first because it's really tight access. They weren't letting a lot of people in and out just because the road was so bad. So it'd be good to kind of get a bunch of stuff in one vehicle and then take it out there and back. I remember originally Beloved Asheville, Samaritan's Purse. Those are some of the bigger organizations that were taking and delivering supplies. And there's a bunch of stuff. I just posted something on my Instagram story. I'd have to see what it's called, but they were having links that you could directly donate to the people there instead of, the Red Cross, which might take your money and put it in a trust for a rainy day. I'll try to see what this link is right here so I can read it out. What I recommend is try to find someone who's generally local, that's boots on the ground, that can work with the families. Even if you just find anybody in Swannanoa, North Carolina, find someone to donate in Swannanoa to take supplies to the people living in tents. Even with a sleeping bag, the water is not sanitary. Let's say they had a house. If you don't have any water and the stuff in the river is polluted, even just washing your hands or going to the bathroom is going to cause an issue. Like, you could have one cut on your hand, get infected, and you don't have a way to get to a hospital, or you don't have sanitary living conditions. Even just one piece of the puzzle missing could, start to make your life a lot more difficult and get you sick. So I guess Samaritan's Purse is a really good start, a big organization that is, through the church, that have been reliable. And then just trying to find some local people. That's what I got right now. And Savage Freedom Ops, Savage Freedom Ops on Instagram, and Beloved Asheville are two that are still doing, like the deliveries and taking donations in Swannanoa right now. So those are two from the Instagram that people were just talking about. They did an update, today, where it's showing all the buildings. It's snowing there, and people are still out there, suffering in the cold.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's sort of what I mentioned earlier, that your experience living in the road is preparing you, right, to living in those harsh conditions. And now we see that it could really happen to any location, because they were all the way up in the mountains. Never thought a hurricane would get there. So in reality now, it really doesn't matter where you live. This is an eye-opening example for anybody. It doesn't matter where you are, that you should be ready for emergencies, right? But then it's also, as you said, that living in the road, you get used to being uncomfortable. It's something that is important to cultivate that mindset, because we don't know when things can get tougher, right? we could have all the preparations for any emergency, but we don't know if we'll be able to stay in the same location. So the best preparation is really comes to how your body is and your mind, right? So if we could prepare for that right now, then it's going to make us a lot more resilient when things come. And of course, as if we're meant to provide and protect, then one of the main things is preparing the next generation to be able to withstand all the hardships that may come. And one thing that I came across your page that stood out to me is that you get a lot of comments and people talking about, just talking hateful comments on that maybe what you're planting is not good for the environment, or that you're just doing it for views. And it just seems like you know they're not helping in any way. And what is your thoughts on that? Like, why do people care so much when you're really just planting fruit trees, and it's helpful to the environment in a way?
Yeah, yeah. It's most of those people, I'd say like most people, I never had someone in real life tell me that it was a bad idea. No hate from anyone in real. Oh, that makes sense. Free fruit, healthy food, makes sense. The people that hate on Instagram are typically, from what I found out, they've gone to school for ecology, and I actually met an ecologist. Let me hang up this call right here. Sorry about that. Um, Most of those people have gone to school for ecology, and what they teach you in ecology school is how humans ruin the environment. They don't teach you, hey, here's how we can benefit it, here's how we can work with it. They teach you, hey, if there's a patch of flowers on the side of the highway, like where they planted them so they don't have to mow it, if you walk through it, you're trampling on the seed heads, and that's going to destroy the environment, because now that 6-foot section of flowers that you walked on is never going to seed that year. They teach you, if you plant a tree from your local nursery out in a park, you just brought non-native soil, and that could have a jumping worm that transfer over and destroy all the trees in the area. They just teach you how, from what I've been told from the people who went to school for it, they teach you how humans destroy things, and they don't teach you how we can actually benefit things. I believe their solution to everything is section off the forest, put gates up, turn it into a tree museum where nothing's ever touched. You never thin out the trees. You never do controlled burns. You don't plant any beneficial fruit bearing or nut bearing trees. You just let it do its thing. And, historically, the natives of the land would manage the land in ways that benefited both the people, the animals, and the environment. You thin out trees. You don't do a clear cut, but you thin out the trees, and it creates more biodiversity. But I plant, when I'm out, if I go to a park or something, it's going to be a native plant that grows historically in that area. So really, like, no issue with it. Don't go out and plant English ivy or kudzu. Don't go planting. Even poison ivy would just be annoying, even if it is native. I'm doing blueberries, American wild plums, pawpaws, stuff that's there anyways. And I think those people are disconnected from their food system, because they'll hate on me saying I'm destroying the environment for planting a pawpaw or a plum tree. And then I ask them where they get their food, and the answer is almost always from the grocery store. So they think they would rather section off land to not have anyone interact with it ever, and then have a bunch of farmland that is managed extensively in the wrong way, sprayed with toxic pesticides and chemicals. And it just absolutely so they're like, hey, let's not touch this, and let's destroy this for food, where they get their food, instead of integrating it all together, where it's all one thing. We get our food from the land around us. We do it in a respectful, educated way, and it improves literally like everything. Like, it just works. I want it to be integrated. That's how it used to be, and they don't see. They just don't see it from that way. They'd rather destroy, 10 million acres of farmland and spray all these pesticides, and then say, hey, you can't go in the forest and plant an apple tree that doesn't need any maintenance. That's bad. Okay, but their apples come from the place where they just dumped 1,000 gallons of bug repellent.
Yeah, it's very interesting because sectioning off land, as in we shouldn't be involved in nature, and just it seems like the agenda for the long run is to keep humans in the cities, and
Yep.
then keep nature on its own so that it regenerates itself. But in reality, that is an agenda to control us so that we're all in the same location and not in rural areas, when in
That's right.
reality there is so much abundance. And how you said, if we integrate and we mimic nature and build food forest, we could also do conventional agricultural methods. We could do greenhouses. There's so many different ways of growing food that in reality, there is no reason to not be in nature and in rural areas. And I guess it comes from the educational system and the programming,
Agreed.
because of course there's a lot of good information in people that study ecology, but how you said, maybe is the perspective or the way that they were taught to think of it as humans ruin the environment. And yeah, of course, humans have ruined a lot of the environment, but that doesn't mean that taking humans out of the environment is a solution either. So
Because we're
it's
I
can
was
you
just
repeat
saying
that?
we are part of nature. We're part of the
Exactly.
environment. We're part of nature. We're here to nurture it. We're not here to section it off, and we're not here to just. I believe we're here to. I just say nurture nature with the fruits. So if you want an apple tree, go compost. Go, compost some leaves. Maybe thin out some trees, get some light over there. You know, turn that mushrooms and get mycelium, fungal growth, and plant a seed, plant a sapling in the ground, and you just made the environment better, and you just changed nature, and it just works.
Exactly. But I guess it comes down to you know making changes in our lifestyle too, because to grow food does take some effort. It's not super complicated, but I mean, you do gotta get your hands dirty and getting the soil right. So get off the phone, getting off of social media. So at the end of the day, um, there is some sacrifice there. So I guess
Right.
is making the right choices for our health and for the future of the next generations in the right way, right? Because taking away our rights in turn to give us privileges is not the answer, right? Because we do have the right to be in nature
Yeah.
and to grow our own food. That's not a privilege, right? We shouldn't be licensed to grow our own food. No, that is our right to grow our own food. So, but at the end of the day, we got to do it starting locally, individually, and that's the only way that we could really make any change, right? So,
Sir.
I saw also that you do have some seeds that you offer, right? So, just wondering, for people out there that don't know where to get seeds, what do you recommend
Mhm.
where people should get seeds from? And also, if you recommend where do you get the ones that you sell, where do you recommend people to plant those?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you can search and try to find a local nursery and buy them in bulk, and you might spend a couple $100 getting thousands of seeds or something like that. Um, and that's totally an option. You can get bare root saplings. I mean, I go on so many when I'm building out these food forests. I have so many different places where I get them. The Forest Service will sell them as well. Usually, the local Forest Service, they grow certain native species. But like on my page, Barefoot Appalachia on Instagram, the link in my bio, I have a pack of 77 seeds: blueberries, American walnut plums, and Chickasaw plums, and pawpaws. And I just have it as like a beginner, mix. So you can germinate them, or not propagate them. You can germinate them in the fridge, and grow them and transfer them into a pot and a bigger pot, and then eventually put them outside in your property. Or you can go outside and just plant them in the dirt, put some cayenne pepper so the squirrels don't dig them, and eventually they're going to come up. So really, with this, it's only as hard as you want it to be. The more effort you put in, the more rewards that you're going to get. Like you can nurture this tree and prune a tree and compost it and mulch it and all this stuff, and you're going to get more fruits. It's, that's simple. But if you just wanted to get a start, you could literally just put some seeds in the ground, and it's going to come up after a cold winter, and it's going to grow, and you could not prune it, and it's still going to have fruit on it. Like, just like, the oak trees out in nature right now, they have acorns even though no one's pruning them. You'd probably get maybe more if you shape the tree a certain way. I don't know. But people who grow carrots, you can go and have a whole raised bed, or you could just till up some soil and throw some carrot seeds and see what sticks. They're going to be as big as a nice black soil compost and raised bed? Probably not, but that's low input. And then you also get a decent output for the time you put in. So yeah, I sell the seeds, the seed pack with the shipping. It's $35 to get the 77 seeds. Or you could just go around online and try to find a bulk order if you really want to go crazy and, get yourself a couple thousand. And just type in whatever kind of seed it is, bulk, wholesale, whatever, and you can get a good deal on that. But, if you don't want to have to buy bulk, 3 different types of seeds, then, I sell them so it's easy.
Definitely. There's so many ways of doing it. It's just a matter of getting started, starting small, and at least, start learning what it takes to grow your own food. And of course, once you get a little bit into it, you realize how important that the soil is to growing your own food and soil health. In one of your videos, I saw how you mentioned, some brooms shed grass growing in the side of the highway. And you mentioned most likely that could be due to low fertility. And then you said that, agricultural lime or cow grazing could help improve that soil. So just wondering, how could someone understand soil health a little bit more, and what are you suggesting anybody that wants to learn on how to improve their soil?
Soil health, man, I learned a lot from same guy Billy, Permapastures Farm, like on YouTube. And I'm sure you probably have videos on this on your page as well. I haven't dug in super extensively, your page. But the biggest thing that I've realized in these past years has been everyone's worried about, oh, this fertilizer, this soil amendment. At the end of the day, if you can change your hard compacted bacterial dominant soil to a fungal dominated soil by composting, bringing in mycelium, making compost tea, if you're in a temperate area, maybe not in Florida, there's probably an equivalent, but getting like stinging nettle, wood nettle, comfrey, you could do comfrey, and you let it ferment in a bucket until it smells really bad, and then you dilute that 10-to-1 with water and water your plants with that. That's going to bring a bunch of microbes. It's like kombucha for your plants, and that's going to help change that soil from being bacterial dominant, hard compacted clay, possibly if you're up in the like in Virginia, Carolina. And that's a good start. Just compost whatever leaves, sticks, sawdust, if it's not from treated wood. Just get anything you can, put it in a pile, and just let it compost, and then use that in your garden. Just as much green material as you can get, or brown material as you can get. Just get it into the ground and or on top of the ground, and start there. And you're way ahead of most people.
Definitely. Composting and just adding organic matter to your soil is just how the forest does it, right? It just stacks on layers over layers, and then over time it decomposes, and then it becomes very
That's right.
rich, that black soil that we see in the forest. Um, so just to close, I know that one of the things that you always mention is plant a fruit tree. So can
Yes.
you just go over that, what you mean by that, right? Like that's sort of like a slogan kind of, but like what is the whole concept, plant a fruit tree?
Yeah, it's plant a fruit tree, rewild the earth. And you can do a nut tree too, but I could say plant a fruit tree, plant a nut tree, plant some comfrey, plant some medicinal herbs. But it's just, we're here on this earth. I mean, you could get biblical with it, or really whatever you believe in. We're here on this earth, and every other animal and just thing existing doesn't have to pay to be here, and they get what they need from the earth. They're not doing, insurance. The monkeys run around, they eat bananas. The squirrels run around, they eat the acorns. The deer are grazing the grass and the heads of the blackberry bushes. So if you want to rewild yourself, you want to make the earth better, you don't even have to do it for yourself. You could do it for the animals, but they also have plenty of food right now for the most part. go outside, plant a fruit tree. I mean, it brought me so much joy to do that, to go back to a place that I was at 4 years ago and to see fruit growing, knowing that I left like a trail of abundance, and that's going to be there longer than I live, for, most likely. Um, and I'd really recommend to go out, try to find a deal with the local church if you don't own your own land. Have a community garden. Go out to the park. Go to the side of the river and find whatever historically grew there. If you don't want to worry about, oh, is this invasive? Is this going to take over? Is this going to affect the ecology in a negative way? Just find something that's native, that produces fruit, and put it in an area where it grows well. Pawpaws grow along the rivers up in most of the U.S. In Florida, you have mango. That's probably from some other country, but it grows well. And a mango's not going to take over and destroy everything. Yeah, just go out, rewild yourself, rewild the local area, plant a fruit tree. That's what usually I'm not wearing a shirt because it's warm out finally. I got the shirts that say plant a fruit tree on them, and then the back says rewild the earth. And that's kind of just my motto. It's just, I don't know, I feel like it represents more than just planting the tree. It's the love, abundance, the nurturing that you can give to that tree. And when I go to a camp spot and I plant a plum tree, I know that someone's going to be there. A family's going to be sitting around the bonfire one night, and they're going to see the plums and realize they can eat them. And that might inspire them to plant those seeds from the fruit that they had just picked. And it might turn into a domino effect. And then all of a sudden, you're going to look around and you're going to see fruit on every corner.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, if everyone was planting fruit trees everywhere, even in the cities, we would have so much food that we wouldn't even know what to do with it, you know? But I like how you said that the trail of abundance when you come back to a place that you've been years ago. And it's so important, right? Because a fruit tree does need that love and nurturing. And that's something that we could dedicate our time with. And in general, I know that in the long run, you're looking to settle down in a place once you find that ideal piece of land. But as of right now, what is the number one thing that you are seeking through your journey while traveling?
Oh, in the beginning, it was meeting friends and people that we could be a part of each other's lives, until we die. Right now, I've been spending a lot of money trying to grow, my land investing business. I'd left my landscaping business in the suburbs, so I need to figure out a stable source of income. Whether that's probably, I don't know if it's going to be from social media, but I want to build more food for us while I'm down here in Florida. I want to connect with people who already are doing that, maybe get them some leads from my Instagram, and then we can like work the and split it up together. But yeah, I want to figure out how to turn this movement into, because right now it is a movement. But at the end of the day, if I can't provide for myself, put food on the table, have money in savings, then I wouldn't be able to do it long term if it doesn't financially make sense. So I'm trying to figure out the missing piece right now is how to take all of this, the creativity and the videos and like my inspiration and just my love for everything that we're talking about here, and how to turn it into something to where I don't have to, be wondering where, my next, $500 is going to come from. It's not like, I'm not like impoverished, but I don't want to spend all my savings and, you know, go back into a city to make money and then have this all be an afterthought. So figuring out how to make this movement a business that helps obviously me, but also it, the longer that I'm in the game, it's going to impact the world and the people involved positively as well. So, the stability, I'd say financial stability. That's what I'm searching for right now. And obviously friends, two of my favorite things in the world is finding wild fruit and meeting new people. So sometimes I'm eating wild fruit with someone I just met and I tell them that, and it's like my favorite thing in the world.
Definitely, man. I mean, I think that you're doing a great job at sharing very valuable information and encouraging others to plant and grow their own food. And as long as you are truly providing value and helping people solve problems, right, related to food forests, designing or finding land, then of course you're gonna have people to help. And it just brought to mind a scripture that's in Proverbs 18, verse 16, which says, "A man's gift make room for him, and bringeth him before great men." So, as long as we really keep in mind in the forefront of helping others, then things will work out and you will find that, the next steps. So, hey, man, I'm definitely looking forward to working together with you. Hopefully, while you're here in the Florida area, we could help each other out, plant some trees, and get to know each other in person. Before
Absolutely, bro.
we end the call, just to, I want you to take a second to invite people where they could follow you and how they could get in contact with you. And if you want to invite anybody to any special events or, I don't know, webinars that you might have be coming up.
Yeah. My main platforms, I do some longer videos on YouTube. I post shorts, all the stuff on Instagram. I post most of that on YouTube. My main platform is Instagram right now. All of these are Barefoot Appalachia. And I got some stuff going on TikTok too. And of course, I post on Facebook, but no one really sees that because I just started. But I figured it'd be good to diversify. Long stuff on YouTube, short stuff on all the main social medias, mostly Insta. And yeah, right now we've got. I'm not a part affiliated with this, but I'm going to the Florida Permaculture Convergence. If you see this, you might have like 10 hours to get there by the time it comes out. I don't know, or maybe it's live. Anyhow, um, the only event that I know that I'm planning on being on that's going to be a big thing. I'm doing like some like a permaculture designers course in August. That's way out there, and then March 18th to 22nd, we've got the Barbara O'Neill. She's like a holistic health person that's pretty famous. A lot of people know who she is. My friend Jax is friends with her, and I'm saying this just because I was out on the road, got exposed to black mold. It almost, took me out of the game permanently. I was very sick, and she had helped me figure out how to detox it from my body. Um, so that's I've got like the link on my profile, but March 18th to 22nd. I'm not organizing it, but I'll be there if anyone wants to meet up and learn. And a lot of the reason I bring it up for this podcast is because a lot of the holistic health people are conscious of where their food comes from. They don't trust Western medicine. They also don't trust industrial food systems. So if you go there and you want to grow your own food, you have a farm. A lot of people there are very health conscious. So that'd be a cool thing that's one of the events that I'm very excited about. And that's going to be in North Carolina, Western North Carolina, away from the flood areas. Coming up in the early spring. So that's what I got right now.
Definitely, man. It was awesome talking with you. I hope that sometime in the next few months that I could have you as a guest again and see, how we're both doing in our journey. So
Sounds great, brother.
definitely, thank you very much for taking the time today, and thank you everyone for listening.
Yes. Thank you for having me on.